There's a very good limited time offer right now, the Apple Card might be getting a new home, and US Bank might be nerfing one of their cards. This and more in today's roundup. Big favor, hit the like button to help with the algorithm. If you know someone that might benefit, then share this with them. First up is a popular travel card with a 100k limited time offer that I'll link down below. Some people I know have pretty much been waiting 4 years for this. For this limited time offer, you're going to get 100,000 bonus points after 5,000 in spend in the first 3 months. One of the draws of these bank points is that you have a ton of flexibility. For cash back, you're getting 1 cent per point, so 1,000 in value. For that 5,000 in spend is 20% return on spend. If you travel, it depends on how you do it. If you book through their travel portal, you're getting 25% more value or 1.25 cents per point, so 1,250 in value. For that 5k in spend is 25% return on spend. Expert mode is transferring to partners like Hyatt, Singapore, or Virgin Atlantic. It does depend on your use case and what you'd be willing to pay and the market price, but my target is about 2 cents per point here. I pretty much want to get about $2,000 in value, but yeah, your numbers might be dramatically different. If you're into hotels, Hyatt is a great option, especially on the top end with options like Park Hyatt Kyoto. If you're looking for something more economic, then Hotel Toronto on Hills in Tokyo is a vibe. Flights are also an option, especially first in business, and one that's still on my list is Singapore First. From New York to Frankfurt, it's 97k miles, and this is the only flight from the US right now that has the suites. This is one of the best first-class products, especially if you have a player too. If you're more deal-focused, transfer to Virgin Atlantic to book ANA. It's 52.5k per way for business from the West Coast to Japan, so 105k round trip. Availability right now is pretty easy out of Seattle and San Francisco. If you're on the East Coast, then Chicago's pretty easy. There is a $95 annual fee, but you also get a $50 credit for hotel bookings on their travel portal. Also, they do have downgrade paths in the no annual fee cards if you need to in year 2. Yeah, whether your team cash back, normal travel, or premium travel, it kind of works for all of them. You probably can argue it, but it kind of feels like Luca, where 9 times out of 10 or 99 times out of 10, it's going to make sense. If you are debating it though and you want to run the numbers, we do have a calculator. I'll link it down below, but the idea is that you can look at your spend and how you want to use the points. On that note, if you want to learn about this card or pretty much any other card out there and you want to support the channel, we do have links down below and also on the website, AskSebby.com. Make sure the links are competitive, that they make sense for you, but otherwise it is a huge way to support the channel, so thank you in advance. Heading over to the Apple Card, there's a bit going on. Arguably not good for Goldman Sachs and also MasterCard. First off, Goldman was downgraded by Morgan Stanley due to their disproportional exposure to rising recessionary risks. To be fair, a lot of this does have to do with the deal side, investment banking, but credit card doesn't help. So there is a pretty big general concern that the Apple Card portfolio is not really the best positioned, since 36% of their loan book is the FICO scores below 660. If the market does get hit harder and we see more layoffs, it could get pretty bad. It's also a pretty big jump from the last number. So back in 2022, it was discussed that Goldman had a big issue, and it was about 28% of their portfolio that was 660 and below. So 28% up to 36% of very high risk loans. Back then, they also had more charge-offs than Capital One, so defaults, people not paying it off, so it should get pretty interesting. For our purpose on the card side, I wouldn't be surprised if we see credit limit decreases. And in fact, we have already seen that over the past year, but I wouldn't be surprised if their scope expands. And a reminder of all of this, Goldman is trying to get out of consumer lending. Along with the change of banks, there's also a potential change of network. So Visa just offered Apple $100 million to switch from MasterCard to them. I guess for them it's chump change, but 100 mil doesn't hurt. The best way to think of it is that the network is the plumbing, but Apple is still expected to find a different bank. American Express is also in the mix. In their case, they'd be both the issuer and also the network, so kind of doing both. This was rumored in the past, but I still have doubts. Main reason being that American Express is pretty good about partnerships and making sure that they win. So you pretty much have two companies, Apple and American Express, who are both winners, and they're going to have strong terms. Given what we know about the portfolio, I think Amex would drive a pretty hard bargain, especially since they would be taking on more risk compared to just a network. In contrast, Visa and MasterCard have a lot less risk since they're just a plumbing. Typically, they don't face loan default risk of lending money, and they're more of a back-end provider. The reason Visa would want this is because there is a lot of money going through the cards, given that the balances are $20 billion. To be fair, it does depend on what gets charged to the cards and also where you use it. For example, Visa might take between 1.4 and 2.1% of each transaction for retail, and it does depend on the type of card. Infinites and preferred get charged more. For restaurants, you might be looking at 2.2 all the way up to 2.8 for Visa Infinite. Travel might be 2.25 to 2.55. So even though it does sound like a lot, they're not keeping the whole amount. They're taking a slice and then passing the rest on to the bank. Let's use the 2.8% number for Visa Infinite. In this case, that's what they're charging the restaurant for them to accept your card. Of that 2.8, Visa might keep 0.1, and then 2.7 goes to the issuing bank. Of that, 1.5% might go to you as a cardholder, which is pretty standard for cash back. Let's say Apple and the bank split the remaining 1.2 and get 0.6 each. So even though Apple might be sitting pretty, the bank still has other costs, such as covering defaults and fraud, customer service to service the cards, marketing if there's any intro bonuses, and then they get whatever's left over. But yeah, Visa doesn't really care because they're getting the toll, they're doing the work, and they're out of it. This is a good segue to the last topic. The US Bank Smartly card might be getting some major changes. Right now, it's one of the best earners, but with a lot of hoops, and also pretty high AUM requirements. So you get 4% cash back on everything, but in order to get that, you have to have 100K in qualifying balances. In the past, and technically right now, you can do that with investment accounts. So a bit easier if you have ETFs, if you have other funds. It's still a lot, but it's in the market, it's doing something. Even though that does seem like a pretty big requirement, a lot of people did transfer money in, and were pretty aggressive with their cards, which isn't too surprising given the rates. The problem though, given interchange fees, is that it wasn't really feasible, so they were losing money in order to get customers. Even with the partner brand, you're not going to get 4% in interchange fees. Also, given the asset levels here, people are probably not paying interest. The main reason a bank would want to do this is to cross-sell, so let's say mortgages or other managed investment accounts. On their end, managed accounts make more sense because they make something. Also factor in that the Smartly 1.0 card is a Visa signature. It's not even a Visa Infinite, it's a mid-level card. That means that interchange fees are lower, and they were probably losing money. About a week ago, there were some rumors from MLG The Shield, and they were pretty aggressive. The idea was that there were huge changes coming April 14th, and a Smarty 2.0 card. My understanding would be that changes would apply to both, and then there would be new requirements for the new card. One big one is that the spend bonus is capped at 10K in spend per statement period. So that first 10K would be at 4%, and then anything after would be at a lower rate. Also, they would start excluding education and tuition, insurance, tax, and business-to-business transactions. Pretty much all the big ones and why people got the card to begin with. Smartly 2.0 for new card members would be even more aggressive, and they'd only count balances in checking accounts, and that's it, not investing and not savings. I initially did take this with a grain of salt since it was on April Fool's, but there is a bit more now. Trees posted some pretty interesting screenshots with details. I think they are internal, so I'm not going to share them and get in trouble, but let's go through the changes. Key points being that Smartly 2.0 is going to start April 14th, and then previous card members of 1.0 will keep the old features and benefits. But there will be additional changes starting May 19th. I still think a lot of the bad changes, the cap as well as the transactions, are going to apply for everyone because that's the main risk. The new card seems to be more about the checking side counting and not anything else. But yeah, even if they don't nerf version 1 initially, it sounds like there is a risk in about a month. Also, mind you that this is already a pretty new card. It launched late 2024 and we're about 7 months in. I probably will do a future video on this if there is more here, but yeah, not a great time. So first off, I don't think the checking account option makes sense since you're losing too much yield on 100K compared to savings accounts. The rates can change, but let's look at an example. A lot of money market funds offer 4.3% and pretty liquid and relatively low risk. So in that case, in order to park 100K, you're losing out on 4.3% in interest. If you do the max spend of $10,000 and assuming the 4% holds, then you're getting about 400 cash back per month. Times 12 months is 4,800 in cash back per year. I guess you could argue that 4,800 cash back, that is a rebate that's not taxable, is better than 4,300 in ordinary taxable income. I guess that can make sense, but it's also a lot of spend. Also, this is best case. This assumes that they don't make any changes in the next 12 months to nerf the program even more. Maybe this is unfair, but I have my doubts, and I'd be very cautious about transferring that much in because I think the program will change. Also, the fact that there are other considerations, for example, the first card, where the US Bank one might actually lock you out of it. So in that case, you might be sacrificing $1,000 in known cash back for 5K in spend in 3 months for the potential of more, but with a lot more spend. Not only that, but the requirement to move in 100k and spend a lot of money. One of the big reasons being that the Smartly card doesn't have an intro bonus. So in order to get 1,000 in cash back at that 4%, you would need 100k in assets and 25k in spend. If you only did 50k in assets for the 3%, you're looking at 33,000 spend, and then for the 2.5%, you're looking at 40,000 spend. $5,000 in 3 months seems comparably easier. I'm generally more intro bonus focused because that makes more mathematical sense, but even if you are going for the card, I'd probably circle back after you see how the dust settles and what the terms actually look like. Even if they keep the 4%, the question is how long, and I wouldn't be surprised if the categories apply to everyone. But yeah, I very much question the viability given the economics. Calculator for the first card down below if you want to run the numbers, but I think that one does make a bit more sense. Again, if you want to learn about cards, we have links down below and also on the website, AskSebby.com. If you made it to this point, leave an abacus emoji in the comments down below and I'll try to heart it and also respond. 3 questions. Number 1, how would you spend 100,000 bonus points? Cash back, travel, and if travel, how? Number 2, where do you think the Apple card will land? Number 3, what do you think will happen to the Smartly card? Let me know and everyone else know in the comments down below. Big favor, hit the like button, subscribe, otherwise if you liked it. See you next time.